This is Smiles TV. Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. I'm your host, Stephanie Anthony Miles, and we have a dynamic broadcast for you today. We're at a location in Fairview Heights, Illinois called Mengi's Mother Earth Natural Gallery Incorporated, and the owner is Gloria Lockett. It's a beautiful facility, and you'll get a chance to kind of get a glimpse of what goes on at Mengi's. It's a cultural art center. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Today on the broadcast, I'm going to be talking with three dynamic, powerful, excellent women from East St. Louis, Illinois. I'll be talking with Edna Patterson-Petty, and she does art in a unique way. She does it on quilts. Also, we have the one and only Charmaine Savage. I am East St. Louis, and she's the publisher and founder of the I Am East St. Louis magazine in East St. Louis, Illinois, and it highlights just people from our community who've gone on to do great things throughout the world. And then a young lady that I just had the pleasure of meeting recently, Veronica Swanson. First of all, she's a media consultant, a very professional, sharp young lady who has helped us get this broadcast together today. She's also produced a publication which it's designed, it's a calendar actually, and it highlights prominent East St. Louis's from our community who've gone on to do great things. And there are some people that you may be just interested in learning a little bit more about. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth, Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Welcome back to Smiles Television Talk Show, and we're at Mengi's Cafe, Mother Earth Natural Gallery, owned by Gloria Lockett. And it's a cultural arts center. You must come visit her at 5900 North Illinois Street in Fairview Heights, Illinois, suite number 14. Ladies, thank you for coming to Smiles Television Talk Show. Can we do a group hug? Group hug. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, right here to my left, everyone, we have Edna Patterson-Petty, and she does artwork on quilts. Thank you, Edna, for coming to Smiles. And my buddy here, Charmaine Savage, who has created the I Am East St. Louis magazine. Veronica Swanson, the great calendar with all those individuals in it. Ladies, thank you for coming to Mengi's Cafe and having a cup of coffee with me.
Thank you for having
Thanks for having us.
How long have you all known each other? First of all, let's start there. Do you know each other? And if so, how long? I know you do. So tell our audience about it.
Well, I've known Charmaine since 2014.
Okay.
But I'm just recently being able to talk to Veronica since the other night. But I met her before. I met her during the opening of I Am East St. Louis magazine, and so I met her there. But we're just now getting to where we're talking.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Everyone's work seems to be intertwined in different ways. Even as an artist, your artwork that you're doing on the quilts is telling a story, and it's a story from your heart. The magazine and the calendar, and we're all from East St. Louis, Illinois, and that's right. What's so magnificent about it. What would you say to say the youth? Your daughter happens to be here, Summer, and I'm glad she's here. But what would you say to some of the youth to encourage them to do some of the things that you ladies are doing?
Well, to answer your question about how long we've known each other, I've known Charmaine since high school.
Yes.
Okay.
We were at Lincoln Senior High School together. We graduated in 1985. And recently, when I moved back to the city in 2013, she reached out to me and she told me that she had this idea for this wonderful calendar because at the time, magazine, and I told her about the calendar that I had envisioned, and we both hadn't started on it, but we were bouncing ideas off of each other, and we found out that we both had a passion for the city. We had both moved back to the city after being gone for a number of years, and she expressed how she wanted to create a magazine that highlighted ordinary East St. Louisans who were doing phenomenal things in their communities, in their industry, around the world. And it's amazing how God placed us together at the same time to have sort of the same vision. Mine wasn't as broad as Charmaine's,
Okay.
or as ambitious as Charmaine's, because that's an undertaking. Every so often you have to write stories, and you're basically publishing a magazine. That's a lot of work.
Right.
But anyway, here we are today, and we're talking about her successful magazine, and we're talking about a calendar that I created. It's called East St. Louis, We Honor Our Own, or the WHOO. And again,
That's
it's
a
just
catchy title. The
well,
Who.
Ardell Bush, my mother, came up with the title, and I knew it was the right one. I was struggling with that, and she said, "Why don't we call it the WHOO?" Because we honor our own, and we need to do that, and we need to celebrate our successes. Sister Petty's artwork and Charmaine's magazine, my calendar, it all comes together because we are celebrating our heritage, we're celebrating where we come from and the people that come from East St. Louis. And there are quite a bit of successful people that have come and gone
Right.
and contributed to our city.
So, Edna, if you will, your artwork on quilts, what gave you that thought, the vision to even
Well,
do that?
when I was a kid, my mom made bed quilts, and so she recycled our old clothing into a quilt, and I used to help cut the fabric, cut the pieces up, and so we had a jar to save the buttons, we had a bag where the zippers would go, and I would help her do that, and that's how I got my love for recycling. But when I actually started making artwork, it was years later when I was an adult, because I sewed clothing for a very long time, and I got tired of that. And so when I started making the art quilts, it went back to remembering what my mother did, but I knew that I wanted to do something different. When you work on something like that, that's a very hard thing to do. It's a lot of work, and I didn't want anybody sleeping on it. You know,
Right,
so it was
right.
different than making her. What she did, because she said she made things to keep us warm, which was great. And with the artist in me, I wanted things that people could look at and enjoy. And so I started doing that. And so her quilts for the bed told a story, because we would sit around and remember what the pieces used to be. Well, that was my skirt, or that was my
Wow.
blouse, and that
That's
kind of
nice.
thing.
That is.
So it gave me that early way of telling a story, and that's what I enjoy, because I talk a little bit now, but during my coming up years, I was a very quiet person. I didn't talk very much to anybody unless someone asked me a question. So I always spoke strongly through the art that I created, because that gave me a voice, and I could put my feelings into that. And I still do that today. I enjoy creating.
That is excellent. That's excellent. And speaking of excellence,
Okay.
I was
Well,
coming right to
I
you.
wanted to add a couple things. You've asked like 3 questions already.
Okay.
But you asked a question about inspiring young girls, and I just wanted to add to what Veronica was saying, that all of the stories that we tell a story about people who are ordinary. You know, none of these people that we're talking about start out being superstars.
Right,
And
right.
start out being international names and even national names or local names. You know, they start out in the neighborhood. That's why I like to, in the stories that we tell, talk about what neighborhoods people are from, so that young people can identify with them and talk about the struggles that they had when they were children. So young people can say, well, that's not much different than, you know, what I'm going through right now.
Let me ask you this. What neighborhood are you from, Charmaine?
I'm from the Lansdowne neighborhood.
Oh, you are? Okay.
am.
Okay, and actually I grew up in the South End,
Okay.
on the Baker Avenue, 1800 Baker.
Okay.
And we moved over to the north side. What about you, Veronica?
37th and Buncombe Road.
Okay. And
10th and Trinley.
10th and Trinity.
That's in the South End.
Right, okay.
Okay.
And our families go way back.
Right.
Yeah. So go
There
ahead,
was
Charmaine.
one other thing that I wanted to mention, and you touched on it a little bit. I was in an interview, a radio interview,
Okay.
with a lady from New York, and there were some people from the Riots Commission that Ms. Petty and I are both
I'm
on.
glad you brought that up. Yeah.
And we were part of this radio interview talking about that, and she had identified myself and Tiffany Grimmett Lee as storytellers, and I had never referred to myself as a storyteller, and that really stood out. It's almost like that's the only thing in the interview, her questioning or her comments, that stood out to me. And as a matter of fact, Tiffany didn't even remember that she had said that.
Okay.
But I took it away and really embraced it. And so that's what we do.
We are, that's right.
We are all four of us. We are storytellers, and we need to embrace that this is what we're doing, and we are keepers of our legacy.
That's such a good way to put it. And when we were meeting together the other day, I think Veronica said something about it's a miracle that so many individuals come out of East St. Louis and make it to world-renowned prominence. What do you think facilitates that? How does that happen?
But I would like to add something before we answer that question
Okay.
in terms of the youth. I do a lot of workshops, and not nearly as many as I'd like to, but especially when I do workshops here in East St. Louis and I work with children, I'm always drawn to the child that's sitting in the corner saying what they can't do, or they're looking timid or something like that. And I approach them. I don't reach out and touch because some people don't want to be touched, and you just never know. So I'll talk to them and kind of find out what it is they like, and then I say, well, I can't do anything. So I said, well, just try. And it's not about being judged. It's about you just letting things out. And I make them feel comfortable. And you can tell when a person becomes comfortable because all of a sudden their body changes, because when you're all stiff like that and then you say something that maybe touch a chord, then you can see them relax. And when I see them relax, then I continue with getting them to become involved. And I'm always telling kids to be themselves. Don't try to emulate anyone but themselves. And if someone beside you is doing something and you can't do it, don't worry about it. Do what you can do. So they have to be made to be comfortable in order to embrace it, whatever it is that they want to do. And so I think things build from that in terms of because they're comfortable. And so if someone likes cartooning or someone likes science or whatever, it's okay to move in that direction.
Encourage them in that direction.
And I think that helps. And so with the storytelling and the kids embrace that, then they can continue to be who they are. And especially when we all, at different times, are talking to kids, we can continue to encourage, continue to build, and that helps them. That gives them the basic, the foundation.
And
forward.
speaking of encouragement, and that's one thing within my family, I think my family did really well in encouraging us as well as neighborhood kids. But what else do you think it is? Because it's something unique about East St. Louis. And I'm not just saying that because we're from there, but there's something very different considering our history and considering, just a lot of the plights that we've gone through. We never stop succeeding.
Can I answer that?
Please.
I think the common thread with everyone that's been successful from East St. Louis has been the fact that we've all had our own unique challenges, whether they were economic, racially, socially, academically, home life, health. You have an intestinal fortitude that's born in a struggle. And if you can overcome those struggles early, you learn that you can do big things. And when I was interviewing those that I profiled, including Charmaine, because I was really touched by her story and the things the challenges she's had, it didn't make it all into the calendar, but I was blown away that this beautiful, tiny, pint-sized woman was somewhere barking orders to Navy SEALs and deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and she's a U.S. retired Navy commander, and she's so gentle, and I want my daughter and my children and other kids from East St. Louis to know that you can become anything you want. So in the interviews, when I interviewed everyone, they always talked about a source of inspiration from East St. Louis, whether it was a teacher, whether it was Mr. Carter Jazz Band, Mrs. Edna Farmer, a mother, a father, an uncle, who all said the same thing. You can do whatever you want to do. You limit your own self. So dream big. And so, again, from the storytelling perspective, it's all about harnessing that power, believing in yourself, and we encouraging one another. And I think that's probably the recipe for everyone who comes out of East St. Louis. You can always point back to someone who encouraged you.
That's good, and that's a good point to take a break, okay? So, ladies, I want you to think about your work and what you're doing, and I want to share some of your background when we come back.
Okay.
Don't go away. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Ladies, during the break, we had some great conversation.
Yes, we
and,
did.
and our public they're getting the feel for you, but I know a little bit more about you, and I want each of you to just to kind of chime in and tell us a little bit more about yourselves, because you're diamonds. We are, and people need to know who you are. Charmaine, this person right here is a commander. And she no.
Yeah.
What was your title and everything when you went to service?
Well, I served 21 years on active duty with the Department of the Navy,
Okay.
and I retired as a commander, which is for the people, Air Force folks who may not know. I'm teasing this.
I know. Wait. For those of you who don't know, my videographer, who is Seth White with IDEX Media Pro, he is in the Air Force, and they have a little thing going on. Go ahead.
But it is the equivalent of a lieutenant colonel in the
wow.
other branches of the service. And I enjoyed my career. I had no idea when I started that I was going to make a career of it. But
Wait. You're so small. So did you have trouble with the respect issue? Did people?
Oh no! Remember, I'm from East St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's good.
So I'm not going to be I didn't allow anybody to, to treat me in a disrespectful manner.
Like
I know.
Maxine Waters, you would not be intimidated.
No, there was no intimidating me whatsoever. Even when I, first started, when I was an ensign, because I know that, and I mean, I didn't allow that when I was a kid.
Right,
growing up.
right.
That's just not how my mother raised me. So, I was born and raised in East St. Louis. Went to college at McKendree. And I joined the Navy because I didn't have a career field in mind that I wanted to do, and I wanted to do something right away. And someone had mentioned the Navy to me, and I went to see an officer recruiter, and that's how I ended up in the Navy. And 21 years later, I retired. I was spent 11 months in Iraq.
Wow.
That was really my only experience outside of the States in the sandbox in Baghdad.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So that's what I did, and then after I retired, I served as a civil servant with the Department of the Navy. I worked at the headquarters for the Navy SEALs. I worked with the Navy SEALs when I was in the U.S. Special Forces, I should say, because it was all service Special Forces when I was in Iraq. And then when I retired, I ended up working in Coronado, California at the headquarters for the Navy SEALs, and I really enjoyed it.
So that's a wealthy background, and that's why your magazine is so excellent. And when I first met you, if you remember, I said, Charmaine, this is excellent. That's great. And then Veronica, now I know you're a media consultant, and you've gone all over the world. Tell our audience a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I grew up on 37th and Buncombe Road. I am the daughter of a retired captain of U.S. East St. Louis Fire Department. His name is Robert Bush Sr. My mother's name is Ardell Bush. She was a Bush married. And for those of you who are from East St. Louis, my grandparents, Claude and Lillian Bush, had a small barbecue stand on Missouri Avenue called Bush's Barbecue. And so that's probably where I get my entrepreneurial spirit, my creativity from my grandparents as well as my parents. My father is kind of no nonsense. He's the disciplinarian, very focused and very driven. And so I'm a little bit of all of that. I went to John Robinson
You didn't go to
elementary
Clark?
school. I did not go to Clark. There's a running joke about going to Clark. I hear great things about Clark. But no, I went to John Robinson School, and I did a couple years at St. Patrick's, and a year at Assumption, and I graduated with Charmaine at Lincoln High School, class of '85. I left East St. Louis when I was 17, and now that I look back on it, if my children are getting older, I realize I was just a baby. But I left East St. Louis at 17 to study at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And that was my first time out of the city on my own, and that just opened up a world to me that I didn't know existed, as far as people from all over the world speaking different languages, different ethnic backgrounds, economic backgrounds, just being in a city where the government rules our country gave me a zeal for wanting to know about foreign cultures, wanting to know more about the government. So I graduated with an international business degree. I thought I wanted to work for the CIA, but I didn't think I was cut out for that. But so I ended up in print publication. I ended up working as a news assistant on the Wall Street Journal, for the Wall Street Journal in the DC Bureau. And so I would basically work for editors and reporters that covered Congress and the White House and some of the government agencies. And from there, I ended up working for Dow Jones in circulation sales. And from there, I ended up coming back home and working for Illinois Power in the late 90s. And from there, I got a taste of government affairs and PR. And then I think I found my passion at that point. After so many years working in the city, I met my husband at the time, and we ended up in Miami, and I went into nuclear energy, but it was all communications, PR focused. Recently, in 2013, I moved back to East St. Louis area, and when I looked around and I took my kids to all the schools where I matriculated, and they said, "Mommy, why are you taking us to these closed schools? Were they closed when you went there?" And I said, "No." And at that point, my heart fell because I have such fond memories of our city, but I realized I couldn't take my children to an open building and walk the halls like so many other parents do proudly with their children, to talk about what it was like when they were at school and what desks they sat in and visit some of the old teachers or whatnot.
Right.
And so that basically struck a chord with me. They needed to know how great our city is and was. And from there, the whole dream of the WHOO calendar was born. So it's a personal project of mine that I'm very proud of, because our children need to know where they come from and they come from greatness.
Wow, just such excellence right here at the table. And Edna and my family, we go way back. And as a matter of fact, your husband has been on the broadcast, and he showed off some of his artifacts from Africa and just all over the world. Give our audience a little bit about your own personal background.
Well, I'm from the South End. I lived on 10th and Trinley, and like Veronica, I had a really, really bad feeling because the school that the first school I attended, Washington School, no longer exists.
Wow.
It's not a closed building. It's a vacant lot now.
Oh, wow.
And but I got married early, and I was the mother of 4 children. And when I was in my late 30s, I knew that I wanted more. Not that I didn't enjoy being with my children, but my marriage was not what I wanted it to be. And so I went to, I worked at Public Aid for a few years, but I got so depressed being there because it's not what I wanted to do. And so I decided I wanted to go to school because my kids were big enough that I didn't have to get a babysitter. So I think I was about 34, and then I attended SIU. And my ex-husband at that time said that it was okay because he felt like that first year of school, just a bored housewife, and I was going to give it up. But no, I stayed in school, and then, so I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts. And then once I got that, the program opened up for art therapy. And I love counseling, and so I got a master in art therapy. And at that time, the way they had the program set up, you couldn't get the master's in art therapy without having a second degree. For some reason, they had it set up that way. So at the same time I was getting my master's in fine art, I also got a master's in art therapy. So it was really a strenuous time to be doing that, along with a husband that didn't want me to be there, and then raising 4 children. And so my children would go with me sometimes to school, and they would sit in the hall or in the back of the class, and I would take them little snacks or something so that would keep them occupied. But I was driven. I just knew that I wanted more out of life. And so once I received my degree in both of the choices that I wanted, then I started doing art. Art is actually my passion.
I can tell. And you were talking about that art therapy, and that's unique.
Well, see, and I use the art therapy instead of just trying to counsel someone singly about what their situations might be. I include my art therapy into my fine arts, into my mother issues. Not my mother issues, but my mother instincts.
I see.
So I try to fuse all of those things together. So when I do a workshop, I try to do a unique workshop that addresses the group at the time that I'm working with. Rather than having a set thing, it's based on the feelings that I pick up from people, or what I think that they might need. And when I do that, then they're telling their story, and sometimes I use cloth. But even though I'm a fabric artist, I'm actually a multimedia artist, and I don't use just one thing. I also do mosaics. I do a little painting. I just combine things, and I'm just like a crayon box. I'm just full of stuff, you know.
We're going to let our audience take a look at some of your pieces, too. And I've never given my story. I'm not going to give it all, but just generally speaking, I have a degree in communications and radio, television production. Never wanted to be on the air, right? Have a passion for our community. I was press secretary for the city of East St. Louis for years, public relations director for different agencies. But I've been a stay-at-home housewife mom since 1999.
Okay.
I tell people when I was majoring in communications, it was during the time you actually had to cut the tape. So and blend it together, splice it, right? See, splice it together. Anyway, enough about that. We're going to take a break, okay? And when we come back, I want our audience to see some of the work that you ladies have done. Okay, we'll share that. And don't forget, we're at Mengi's Cafe, Mother Earth Natural Gallery, 5900 North Illinois Street in Fairview Heights, Illinois. It's a cultural arts center, and this young lady does shea butters and body scrubs and just all kinds of things. And on Thursday nights, she has reggae music. On Friday nights from 7 to 9 on both nights and 7 to 9 on Fridays is jazz. And it's just an effort to bring people in so they can get a feel for her place as well as taste some of her food. Now, these are some beautiful pieces. If you will, just tell us all about this piece and what are the buttons and how did you decide to use them on here?
Well, like I said earlier in our conversation, that I recycle, and I got an early collection of with using buttons, that we were taking off of old clothing. So that sparked a thing for me to always. So whenever I go somewhere and I see buttons or beads or whatever, I'm collecting them. I love thrift stores. So and I love to rummage through them because I never know what I'm going to find. And so all of my pieces are made from recycled fabric. I don't go out and buy any whole fabric unless it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, and what is she doing on here?
This is an image on a piece, and I call it pondering because she's leaning on her pole as she's churning.
Wow.
And I decided, I go by feel, and my feelings told me, my instincts told me to create it this way, and so that's how all of my art come to be. I love to tell stories through the art. I had the opportunity of going to Senegal, West Africa, and I actually saw a woman walking down the street with a fish on her head. Okay. And so in seeing that inspired this piece. And all of the fabric in the background is like fabric from an old dress that I had and an old blouse.
Yes,
but again, I love the collection of telling a story through using beads or buttons, or sometimes I don't have anything other than the fabric. And sometimes I even add paint to it. But I like to tell the story from things that I saw or things that I feel.
How long does something like this take to make?
People ask me that all the time, but it's because that I love creating. That's my escape time. So in my escape time, I don't want to worry about how long something takes. Okay. I want to lose myself in what I'm doing because I have enough stress in everyday life. So art is my escape. So if you ask me from one point to the other to keep time, that's stressful for me. So I just lose myself. And this piece is called Conscious. Okay. So that's why this head is there. So you're just thinking about things that you need to do, things that have happened and all of that.
Okay. And we have,
This piece is about Miles Davis.
That's what I was going to say.
So what I did was I printed an image of Miles Davis, and then I sit there and I was watching the Olympics. And as I watched the Olympics, I hand-stitched this piece. So this took 42 days. Now, and so I actually called the piece 42 Days to You. Okay. But it actually took 42 days for me to create this whole piece. And so it's all hand-beaded, one bead at a time. And then I sewed this piece on top of the fabric. So, and sometimes what I do dictate the size that it's going to be.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then this one looks like it's about East St. Louis.
This piece is about East St. Louis, so I need your help a little bit.
Okay, Seth, can you get a good shot of this one?
So this tells a story. East St. Louis became incorporated in 1861. The riot of East St. Louis happened in 1917, and Charmaine and myself are a part of the commission that's working on the commemoration. And then in 1971, that was our first black mayor, James Williams, And then I put 2000 on because of the things that we're trying to do in East St. Louis. The center of it shows what's going on. The shoes and the shoes and the mask represent Catherine Dunham. The palette here just represents the arts. We have a chess club in East St. Louis, and we have a writers club in East St. Louis, and of course music. And this represents East St. Louis Toodaloo, and Duke Ellington wrote that about East St. Louis. And in the background is the map of East St. Louis, the actual map of it. Okay. And I call it Cultural Explosion because that's what's happening here.
Cultural explosion. You know what? When I was in school, we had the #1 chess team in the country.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so very
You're
much.
so
These
welcome.
are beautiful pieces. I ask all of my guests, if you get a chance to come back to Smiles, will you come back?
I will come back.
You
Thank
saw
you.
her on camera. She said she'll be back. Thanks.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more Smiles. I'm standing here with Veronica Swanson, publisher of the East St. Louis. We honor our own calendar. Veronica, tell us a little bit about your calendar.
Well, Stephanie, I created a 12-month calendar. It's called East St. Louis, We Honor Our Own, or the WHOO. And what it is it features ordinary East St. Louisans who are natives of our city who've gone on to blaze a trail in their respective industries. It starts in January. We honor Marsha Anderson, who is the first female Major General in the U.S. Army. And in February, we honor Kimberly Boyd, who is a colonel in the United States Army Reserve. Mm-hmm. The fascinating thing about each profile, every month, we are highlighting people who are just ordinary. And they talk about the challenges that they had to overcome or endure growing up in the city.
How they Dwight
Bush is a former ambassador to the United States for Morocco under President Barack Obama.
Right.
And what's fascinating in each profile, they talk about challenges they've endured, who inspired them, what motivated them to pursue their dreams and their goals. And the purpose of this calendar is to share with other residents what inspiration they can pull from a lot of these individuals who have shaped their industries, who have done magnificent things in the world, and they have a reference point. Mm-hmm. We all are residents of East St. Louis. We all have gone on to successes, and they can do it too. So it's nice to know someone like Calvin Glenn, who's a radio personality, and he also owns a media company.
Okay.
I featured Charmaine, as I said, too, as we were being reacquainted with each other after graduation from high school. We hadn't seen each other in about 30 years or so. And I also share her story, and she's here as the publisher of IME St. Louis magazine.
That is excellent. If individuals want to purchase your calendar, how can they do that?
You go to www.lulu.com and search for the WHOO calendar, and it'll pop up, and it will also give you a little bit of background about the calendar.
Okay, we honor our own. And will you come back to Smiles City?
Absolutely, I'd love to.
On camera, she said yes. Thank you so much. We love the calendar.
Thank you.
God bless. Stay tuned. We have another showcase for you from Charmaine Savage. I am East St. Louis. I'm standing here now with Charmaine Savage, the publisher and founder of I Am East St. Louis magazine.
Yeah.
Charmaine, tell us about the process of the magazine. How did you get to create such an excellent piece?
Well, there's two parts that I want to mention. The first part is publishing. Publishing is actually paying for everything, making sure that there's funding available and paying the bills. The other piece is editing, and the editor is responsible for the words and the visual of the magazine. So the bulk of the work is, there's a lot of publishing behind the scenes, but the bulk of the work and what you see is through the editorial process. So you've got the words, you got the words, and you've got the visual of what the magazine looks like. So the words come from our contributors.
Okay.
So we have some really amazing people who write for the magazine, including yourself.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being one of our storytellers.
You know what? Thank you for allowing me to write for your magazine.
And we also have the photographers. We, as much as possible, we have original photography in the magazine. The only time we don't do original photography is if there's somebody who's too far away for us to get to in time to publish the issue. And you know, like I said, original photography, and that's kind of what draws people in to pick up the magazine is the photography and knowing some of the people that are going to be featured in the next issue of the magazine.
Okay,
So-
and the magazine is free.
So the magazine is free. There's 3 different ways to get the magazine. First of all, the free part. You can pick it up from our local distributors. So we just went from the magazine being bi-monthly. Last year we were producing the magazine every 2 months. This year, okay, let me back up. I am the publisher and the editor of the
And the
magazine.
editor.
That gets a little bit overwhelming.
Chopping up all that stuff. But I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it gets a little bit overwhelming. And so this year, the magazine is coming out quarterly.
I see.
So our readers will see the magazine every 3 months this year. It's free. We're gonna have 3 main locations where people can pick up the magazine. Billy's Pastries in Edgemount in East St. Louis, all 3 locations in East St. Louis. We've got the professional office building at 4601 State Street. And we also have a new location, which is Eastside Express Restaurant, which is at 1950 State Street in East St. Louis.
Okay.
The other way that people can get the magazine is through subscriptions. So we mail the magazine to some individuals. That costs $10. And so some people ask, if it's free, why do people have to pay $10? Well, you're not paying for the magazine.
Right.
You're paying for the shipping and handling, basically. You know, we have to pay for the envelopes, we have to pay for the labels, the ink, and I have to pay somebody to package all of that. And then, of course, we have to pay the postage. We've got over 100 people right now that are subscribing to the magazine.
That is
So that would be a major expense if I had to take that on myself. So, but those people, they're really paying for the convenience of having it come to their home in the mail, and to not have to go to the distribution site
Okay.
and try to get one before they're all gone. Now, the third way that people can get the magazine is online. So there's a digital version of the magazine online. It's free at www.imestl.com. That's IAMESTL.com. People can go there. Every issue of the magazine is available digitally on our website.
Wow, that is just simply
Yes.
wonderful. Now, if
Yes.
individuals are wanting to become sponsors or to contribute to the production, how can they do that?
I'm so glad you reminded me to talk about our advertisers. Because people wonder, so if it's free, how do you pay for it? We have some amazing contributors to the magazine. We also have some amazing advertisers who they love the magazine and they want to support it. Obviously, they're getting exposure by advertising in the magazine, but they are also part of this because they want to support this and they want to see it keep going. And I would love for people to go out and support the people who are advertising in this magazine because they are really godsends. And we do also take donations. Right now, some issues we break even on, some issues I come out of pocket, and I know that there are people out there who would love to donate to make sure that the magazine keeps going. On our website, again, www.imestl.com, there is a button, a GoFundMe button, where people can go and donate if they would like to do that.
Give us some secrets about the next edition.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm so excited. So the next issue is our sports-themed issue. We are featuring the legendary coaches of East St. Louis. That is the boss, Benny Lewis, Sr., is going to be one of our features. The track coach, Nino Fenoy.
Right.
Obviously, the people from East St. Louis know who Benny Lewis is, but he's he was a Lincoln High School men's basketball coach. Nino Fenoy was the girls track coach at Lincoln. Legends. And we also have Flyers football legend
Is that Bob Shannon?
Bob Shannon.
Okay.
Yes. So people are going to be so excited about that issue. We have some other surprises for people in that issue. Jackie Joyner is in that issue. She's going to be featured in the Village department of the magazine because of the amazing work
Right.
that she's doing in the city of East St. Louis for our children. We also have Ted Savage. Ted Savage is actually on the cover of the
that's
magazine,
excellent.
and we have him in our Art of Perseverance department in the magazine.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I am East St. Louis, and if people are interested in making contact, she said go to her website, I
Yes.
am East St. Louis.
IamESTL.com.
IamESTL.com. Charmaine, we have you on camera. If you get a chance to come back to Smiles, will you do that?
Please ask me to come back.
Okay, you're
Yes.
so sweet. You're a sweetie pie. I just love her. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Smiles. Okay. Well, we're wrapping it up. I know you don't want to go, do you? And we want them to come back. And you know I asked each one of them, will they come back? And you saw them on camera. And they said, yes, we have to do it again. Thank you for tuning into Smiles Television Talk Show. Tune in every Monday. And guess what? We have new territory. We are now on Charter Cable Channel 198. The last Monday of every month at 1:30 p.m., you can see us all throughout Missouri, far out in Illinois. As usual, catch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Keep smiling. You look better when you smile. And remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Be the reason someone smiles today.